24 teams took part in the competition, with players from as far away as Hong Kong and Victoria taking part, as well as a ladies' team. Play on Tuesday was abandoned because of rain, leaving organisers to reduce the tournament from 6 21-end games over 3 days to 6 15-end matches in 2 days. At the start of today's play, 3 teams had won all 3 of their previous matches. They were Jim Yates' Victorian combination, as well as 2 Charlestown teams, skipped by Russ Hill and Mike Beasley. Late this afternoon, Western Suburbs Leagues Club team, led by Alan Wellham, came out of the blue to win the championship with 5 games plus 39 ahead of the Redhead side, led by Richie Graham.
Last-minute preparations were the order of the day as workers made ready for the thousands who will visit Newcastle's biggest boating event of the year. Hundreds of boats from many of the area's big marine suppliers are on show until Sunday. It's a chance for a close look at the small and not so small of the nautical world, including the latest in navigational technology. In fact, there's everything you need to head out to the deep or to just spend some time splashing around close to the shore. This year, the Maritime Services Board has on display its computer-operated licence testing facility.
Who has right of way? Hold course or slow down? Slowing down.
The MSB will also answer questions relating to the moorings clean-up currently underway in Lake Macquarie. The boat show is open from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. daily.
Kickboxing originated in Thailand and is that country's major sport. In recent years, it's gained popularity around the world, and on Sunday, the Newcastle Shido Khan Club takes on 4 teams from Sydney at the Broadmeadow Basketball Stadium. Each fight consists of 3 2-minute rounds, with the boxer judged on how many hits he makes with both his fists and feet. There are 9 Hunter Region boxers competing in 5 divisions on the weekend, and they're expected to prove strong opposition for the Sydney fighters. A feature of the program will be a sparring match involving the current Australian and South Pacific champion, Rick Kulu. If the success of the last kickboxing tournament held in Newcastle 4 years ago is any guide, then organisers say a large crowd should be on hand on Sunday to take in the action. The exhibition, which is on until next Friday, features work from Waratah, Mayfield East and Mayfield West primary schools and the Waratah High School. As well, works by former students and members of the Waratah High School teaching staff is on show. One of the main themes of the exhibition is the environment and how the artists see their surroundings. A highlight is a work by the students of the Waratah Orthopaedic School. They'll be making a special trip to see the exhibition and their work. As well as paintings and sculptures, there's plenty of pottery and ceramic work on display. Opening the exhibition last night, the New South Wales Minister for Education, Rodney Cavalier, said he was pleased with the way schools are being run in the Hunter region and on the Central Coast.
There's very strong support from parents, from the wider community. They recognise that we have in our government schools and in our private schools a first-class education product.
Is there anything else the department should be doing in the Hunter, on the Central Coast, in the schools?
Well, of course, if one had endless amounts of money, then one could spend it. But given the resources available, given they're not likely to expand very much, if at all, I think we're doing very well, and the schools are doing very well with the funds that they have.
Meantime, at the Newcastle Contemporary Gallery last night, a different sort of exhibition was on display. Called Rights, it features the works of 7 local women artists. And although they've worked separately, they've developed a similar theme, the role of rituals in society. The exhibition features photographs, paintings, sculpture and prints, and will soon be on show in Sydney.
We've really seen the same continuing bitterness and bickering within the industry between the employers and the unions. And from the government's point of view, we've seen an exercise in passing the buck from one to the other.
Mr Hawke concedes the talks appear to have reached a stalemate. If the crisis isn't resolved next week, he's prepared to convene another meeting between employers and the unions.
In tonight's news, a report on the opening of the final stage of the new Hexham Bridge. The approach ramp for northbound New England highway traffic is expected to significantly ease congestion at the Hexham traffic lights. The old Hexham Bridge will now be used exclusively for southbound traffic.
For all the news,
join us tonight
at 6.
Hello, I'm Jane Button. Tonight I'll be reporting on the effects of the downturn in the coal industry. The Hunter Valley Research Foundation says that for every one job that goes in the mining industry, another job will go in flow-on industries.
For all the news,
join us tonight
at 6.
Towns like Singleton and Muswellbrook are in the heart of the Upper Hunter, and many townspeople work in the open-cut mines, pumping out coal for export. It's this export coal that has been most severely affected by the recent world downturn in coal prices. Towns like Curry and Cessnock in the Lower Hunter are also affected because about 5,000 miners commute from these areas each day to work in the Upper Hunter mines. According to Peter O'Connell of the Hunter Valley Research Foundation, the downturn in the coal industry has far-reaching effects for the rest of the Hunter Valley. He says for every job lost in the coal industry, another is lost in support industries.
In the terms of the immediate flow-on, the service flow-ons, they will be the products purchased by the mines. So that'll be the type of equipment they purchase, the supplies to actually physically mine the coal. Our figures indicate that approximately 1/3 of the flow-on job loss would be associated with that component. A significant portion, the other portion, the 2/3, is actually associated with the miners' pay packets.
The Singleton Shire clerk, John Flannery, is an optimistic person by nature, and he doesn't want to be alarmist now. But he admits that towns like Singleton are facing tough times. In the Singleton Shire, there are 12 mines which employ about 7,000 people. He says about 3,000 miners and their families live in Singleton itself. A lot of miners bought land and built large houses during boom times. Many will find themselves unable to pay off bank and building society loans if they are retrenched. Already housing prices have started to fall in the area, and there is a fear that they will drop even further if there are widespread retrenchments.
Already we've seen some retrenchments and some concern that there'll be more in the near future. And some of these houses are coming on the market. People are probably looking for jobs elsewhere. But the prices of land and housing have eased considerably, and they're probably going to go down a little bit more. But there is an oversupply. We're confident that given time, that market will plateau itself out. And while we are still a very buoyant economy, but it's going to take a bit of a pounding in the next few months ahead.
Both the Falcons and Tigers were looking at the wooden spoon before last night's match. The Falcons had won only 3 games all season and Melbourne 2, but it was a determined Newcastle which took advantage of an inexperienced Melbourne combination. While Melbourne didn't provide the toughest opposition of the year, the Falcons got their act together with their shooting and rebounding a vast improvement on recent weeks. Top scorer for Newcastle was Jerry Everett with 28 and Wayne McDaniel 24, with slam dunks galore to keep the crowd cheering.
There were no players coming towards him. Bang! That's about 4 each.
4 dunks each, I think.
The Falcons' win now assures them of at least not finishing at the bottom of the table. That spot will surely go to the Melbourne Tigers. Next Saturday night, the NIB Falcons are at home again, this time to the Perth Wildcats.
Easy 2 points. That was actually...
The Warkworth mine was one of the Upper Hunter's most profitable open-cut mines, but like most, it's feeling the bite of the downturn in world coal prices. At the beginning of July, it presented its workers with a 14-point plan to restructure, reduce operating costs and increase production. But negotiations broke down, and last night the company decided to push ahead with one of the more controversial aspects of the plan, the introduction of an 8.5-hour day instead of the current 7. This would mean that each worker would be forced to work an hour and a half of overtime each day, enabling Warkworth to increase its production by 20%, which the company says would once again make it profitable. At the same time, it would not have to employ any extra people.
We agreed prior to the last aggregate meeting with the permanent officials that we would extend all our other areas of change to that period of moratorium, on the basis that we could have constructive and meaningful negotiations to properly restructure our mine site within the month period. Unfortunately, over the number of discussions we've had on the mine site, then we have not been able to reach that area of restructure, and we find ourselves in no alternative after all our talks broke down but to pursue with our earlier plans.
But the union won't have a bar of it. It has accused Warkworth of breaking the federal government's moratorium and says it plans a national strike on Wednesday unless the company backs off.
Jim, have Warkworth broken the moratorium?
Well, yes, I would say they have. My understanding of the moratorium was that there was 4 weeks given to discuss from mine to mine what the owners at each individual mine were requiring or requesting. That certainly is still continuing up to the end of this week, and with that was that status quo should be remained for that month. They're now demanding that people work an 8.5-hour shift. Now, my understanding of the award is that reasonable overtime means that a person individually is entitled to consider a request to work overtime and give an independent decision. Now, the company has forced a blanket commitment on the workers at Warkworth saying that they must all work an 8.5-hour shift on a continuous basis week by week.
On his way into Parliament House today, Prime Minister Hawke effectively gave a warning to both employers and unions.
What you've got to remember is when you talk about the coal industry in Australia is that we had record levels of sales last year. Australia's doing very well, and if we're going to continue to do that, then we've got to be prepared to make adjustments in this country. And the best way of doing that is by discussion and cooperation. And I hope that will be learnt, and I hope it will be learnt in a not too hurtful manner.
The Newcastle Out of Workers operate as a community youth support scheme. They just wound up a project called Art Front, which involved unemployed people decorating the outside of the Wood Street premises with a large colourful mural. The latest project, Life in the Machine, follows on from this.
Basically, Art Front was a positive response to a negative situation in which the unemployed people wanted to portray themselves as breaking away from labels such as unemployable and dole bludger. This project is kind of going to be catering for the ongoing creative outlet for unemployed people between the age of 15 and 25.
Today, the first class in audio-visual work was held. Over the next 10 weeks, the project officers hope to teach each subject so that those undertaking the courses develop a high degree of proficiency. Although the classes may not lead to jobs, they do help to build up self-esteem and to broaden the horizons of this city's unemployed youth.
Archbishop Ambo, who is the first Papua New Guinean Anglican primate, says the ordination of women would be opposed in his country because of the traditional sex roles. He says that theologically the Synod has made the right decision and that the ordination of women would further divide the Anglican Church.
The Anglican Church in Papua New Guinea, we are a very young church, and we are worrying that Anglican Church as a whole is separated already. And this is another separation going to take place. As a young church, we are very, very concerned. And I thank God for that period they gave when they decided to postpone for 2 years.
Hello, I'm Jane Button. Tonight I'll be reporting on Carrington Slipway's response to claims that Newcastle has serious shortcomings as a potential place to build the frigates. The claims were made in a report to the Hunter Development Board.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
Last night at a special meeting, the Newcastle Australian Football League stripped Nelson Bay of all points earned while Tompkinson was playing under suspension. The A grade lost 8 points and the reserves 32. League President Don Geddes says the ring-in could have gone unnoticed except for Tompkinson himself.
The Chief Executive Officer of the League received a complaint that Tompkinson had on Saturday night at the hotel in Nelson's Bay boasted about what had happened.
Tompkinson was a suspended player. How did he get by with playing 15 games without being noticed by officials?
With the Australian rules in Newcastle, we play at single and we play at Nelson's Bay, at Warner's Bay and other locations. There are bigger teams. The umpire who was responsible for reporting the particular player on the 2nd of May may not have refereed or umpired that game, that team again, and consequently may not have seen that particular player on the field.
Tompkinson has now been suspended until January 1989, while the Nelson Bay Club has been fined $500. President of Nelson Bay, Jack Davison, says they continued playing Tompkinson because they were short of players. Meanwhile, in tomorrow's A-grade major semi-final at the No. 1 Sports Ground, Nelson Bay play Williamtown.
The Act says that any person who holds a position of profit under the Council cannot hold civic office. The returning officer, Town Clerk John Rankin, disallowed Mr Stocker's nomination, despite claims that he will resign his position with the park. Even with this setback, Mr Stocker was out campaigning in Toronto today, along with other independent candidates.
I'm not employed directly by the Council, I'm self-employed. I don't have any of the advantages of being an employee. So, first of all, we don't accept that that is a point for disqualification. The second thing is that if that were an impediment, and we don't concede that I have offered my resignation and asked that it be accepted by Council this coming Monday night.
Mr Stocker's campaign is based on offering himself as a full-time mayor, opening council to more people and breaking the ALP caucus system. He's also critical of the power of the bureaucrats. Ironically, it is they, he says, who are stopping his chance to run for mayor.
It seems to me that it's an interpretation of the law which is unnecessarily harsh and, if anything, inclined to be hinge entirely on a technical point.
The man was travelling with a 45-year-old male passenger along the Gang Gang Road at about 5:20 p.m. in this Sigma sedan. Police would give no reason why the car ran off the road, plunging headlong into a tree. Newcastle and Port Stephens Rescue, as well as the fire brigade, were quickly on the scene and managed to release them from their vehicle. The younger man received only broken ribs and was taken to the Mater Hospital by ambulance. However, the older man is thought to have suffered a cardiac arrest after impact, as well as fractured ribs. He was taken by Westpac helicopter to the Royal Newcastle Hospital. For Lakes United, who celebrated at the Belmont Sportsman's Club, it was a big night. They sang and worshipped their coup in winning the Newcastle District Rugby League Grand Final for the third year in succession. This year the Seagulls took on South Newcastle and beat them 24-16. But Souths took their loss in very good spirits, and the ales certainly flowed freely at South Leagues Club at Merriweather. South Newcastle had been looking to win their first premiership since 1976 and drew first blood after a kick from John Crook. But at half-time, the score was 12-all. In the second half, Lakes went to a 2-point lead following a penalty goal. 5 minutes later, Robert McCluskey puts up the bomb, Walters drops it, and Panowitz scores for South to put them in front 16-14. That was to be the end for Souths.